President Buhari promises improved military at 2023 Troops and Colors Parade.
The efforts of the troops leading to unprecedented successes was evident in the increased number of neutralized insurgents.
Put on hold June deadline for fuel subsidy removal. National Economic Council tells federal government.
Council agreed that the timing for the removal of fuel subsidy should not be now, but that we should continue with all of the preparatory works.
And first batch of Nigerians from Sudan to arrive Abuja today.
It is important that the world stands with the people of Sudan to provide the resources that are required for humanitarian organizations to ramp up emergency response.
Our focus on Good Morning Nigeria today is on the new policy on agricultural extension.
So if you are a farmer, no matter the type of farming you do, we have good news for you. And the federal government recently approved a new policy on agricultural extension services. Now, this is to ensure that everyone in the country, all farmers, do not experience shortage of food at any time in the future. Of course, they will need a lot of technology and expertise. Kingsley.
Well, the policy is aimed at making the practice of agriculture in the country more technology-driven by supporting smallholder farmers with the necessary tools and machinery needed to boost cultivation, harvests, and increase yield.
Precisely. Now, for effective implementation of this policy, 100,000 extension service agents have been recruited or were recruited last year by the Ministry of Agriculture to drive support for smallholder farmers across all agricultural value chains.
Now, the agents have been charged with the task of engaging rural farmers, helping them to gain a clear insight of effective agricultural practices to overcome some of their challenges, while also offering such farmers agricultural extension services from time to time.
So this has become necessary as there is a growing lack of interest, especially among young people, to go into farming activities. And the aged population, who are also mostly into farming, are not going to live forever.
So there's been advocacy to galvanize the interest of young Nigerians in agricultural practices, such as farming, in order to avert the consequences of a death of farmers in the future that could ultimately trigger some food crisis.
So what makes this new policy different from others that have been introduced before? All right, we shall be looking at the nitty-gritty of the issues with the panel of guests that we have assembled on the program today. Again, our focus will be on the new policy on agricultural extension. And so I welcome you to Friday's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. It's happening live on the network service of the NTA. I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo, and of course I joined my colleague Claire to also welcome you to the program. We are transmitting on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority right here from Abuja, the nation's capital. In the course of the program, we'll have regular complimentary segments, and of course this will include newspaper review as well as business, but usually business will come before newspaper review. So for now, we're taking the highlights of the morning news, and here is our colleague, Comfort Amudu.
Good morning, Kingsley and Claire. Good morning, Nigerians, and here are the highlights. Our first batch of about 1,600 stranded Nigerians that are being evacuated from Sudan by the federal government are expected to arrive Abuja today, Friday, 28th of April 2023. Emergency Management Agency says arrangement has been completed with an indigenous airline that will airlift them from Egypt to Nigeria.
It is important that the world stands with the people of Sudan to provide the resources that are required for humanitarian organizations to ramp up emergency response and humanitarian assistance to the people in need. One life lost in Sudan is a life too many.
In the meantime, the National Emergency Management Agency and the Nigerian Diaspora Commission have reacted to trending videos on the purported abandonment of Nigerians along Sudan-Egypt Road. NEMA told NTA that one of the 13 buses on the convoy developed a fault and others pulled over to wait for the vehicle to be fixed. And the agency therefore refuted the claim that the bus drivers protested lack of payment. The federal government is spending $1.2 million on the evacuation exercise. And in furtherance of sustained efforts at revigorating the fighting spirit of the nation's troops, the new national and regimental colors were formally presented to all the formations of the Nigerian Army to inculcate in them the greater pride in service delivery. This was at the Trooping and Presentation of Colors Parade 2023, presided by President Muhammadu Buhari.
Sergeants, the efforts of the troops leading to unprecedented successes was evident in the increased number of neutralized insurgents and those that voluntarily surrendered alongside their families.
President Muhammadu Buhari has attributed the overwhelming victory achieved by the All Progressives Congress in the recent elections to hard work while overconfidence was the main reason why the combined opposition lost. The president stated this while granting audience to members of the Progressive Governors Forum on solitary visit.
We equally thank him and congratulated him that the world is acknowledging his role, particularly in ensuring that elections took place successfully in Nigeria, even in spite of what is happening around the region, and to thank him for his management of the economy.
President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu has met with members of the Progressive Governors in his series of consultations.
APC is one big family, and today we are rallying around our president-elect, and he is leading the way. And by the special grace of God, we're going to come up with choices that is going to reflect the unity of our country. The agenda of the Governors Forum is to ensure that we key into the vision.
And the United Kingdom says it will avail Nigeria all expertise and technical support towards a hitch-free transition to the next administration. Development Director, UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office in Nigeria, Christopher Peacroft, stated this during a collaborative visit to Presidential Transition Council in Abuja.
Provide support and access to world-class expertise that you can draw on without fear or favor. And I want to make it clear that you are not alone. Nigeria has huge goodwill around the world, not least with the UK, and we stand ready to provide you with support.
And in other news, the National Economic Council is asking the federal government to put on hold the June deadline for fuel subsidy removal, pending the review of plans towards creating sufficient palliative measures for Nigerians. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, announced this while briefing journalists on the outcome of the Council's meeting.
Council agreed that the timing for the removal of fuel subsidy should not be now, but that we should continue with all of the preparatory works that needs to be done, and that this preparatory work has to be done in consultation with the states and other key stakeholders, including representatives of the incoming administration.
Those are the news highlights for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back shortly with Claire and Kinsley after this break. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. This is Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service, and on Business News this morning, we hear that as December 2022, the Development Bank of Nigeria (DBN) has disbursed more than 631 billion naira to over 300,000 micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises. Let's get all the details from Alika Opanache Arwa.
Development Bank disburses 631 billion naira to micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs. The value is a modest increase from 482 billion naira disbursed in 2021. It shows a 31% growth in financing support and 50% growth in MSMEs imparted. At an event in Abuja, the bank disclosed that out of the total beneficiaries in 5 years, 67% were women, while 27% were young people, with more than 250,000 jobs created. Having identified challenges MSMEs face in assessing lending opportunities, the bank emphasized that it has continued to explore various avenues to eliminate barriers to accessing fundings by MSMEs, which places a strong importance on the role of scaling up capacity building for MSMEs in Nigeria. Let's take a look at Thursday tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, Alika Opanache Arwa.
Thank you very much, Alika, for the business news package. Coming up next is Newspaper Review.
Chukwudiokole Uwaja is right here with us for Newspaper Review, and it's my pleasure to always welcome him on Good Morning Nigeria Friday's edition.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you so much, TGIF.
Yes.
And we seem to be getting away with the fact.
I haven't seen you since Arsenal was sent.
That's actually why are you so wonderfully preemptive? Although it's not quite good news. Los Blancos suffered in the hands of Girona. I thought somebody was going to taunt me about Man City putting Arsenal in its place. The young child girl.
Chukudi, welcome.
Thank you. So let's go, guys.
You want me to start off, Kingsley? Okay, let me start off with the Punch. And so the Punch takes off from the National Assembly leadership issues and says Tinubu governors dump consensus for zoning. It's on page 2. Governors advise Tinubu against endorsing candidates. Seek due process, he's told. Now work with party leadership for principal officers election, Tinubu equally tells governors. And of course, the very historic ceremony that happened yesterday at the Eagle Square. The picture stories are there telling the story, and you see, of course, the president in his full regalia. Over 60,000 soldiers recruited under my watch, he says. Also see the parades there, and let's take a look at other stories now. Just below that picture story, governors, NEC members commend Oshibajo for exemplary leadership, page 34. Nigerians rejoice as police go after rogue corps is on page 3. And $2.4 billion diversion claim baseless. Malami, it's on page 16. Above the nameplate, federal government plans supplementary budget as NEC suspends subsidy removal. Details on page 29. Again, FG plans supplementary budget as NEC suspends subsidy removal. Rescued Nigerian students from Sudan arrive Egypt, await airlift. Page 7. PDP, LP lost poll to overconfidence. This has been attributed to Mr. President. Now that's the outlook on the front page of the Punch.
We also have the Nation newspaper, and the following headlines are right there on the front page. 48 million barrels of crude oil not missing, Malami tells reps. 10 burnt, scores injured in Plateau tanker explosion. Buhari, we have done our best to improve security. UK PM Sunak pledges support for Tinubu administration. Expect improved security under Tinubu, says Edun. Lover sets self ablaze. Mixed reactions trail subsidy removal shift. NLC, LCCI, and NECA, and others state positions. Sudan crisis, first batch of returnees expected today. Egypt clears airpeace at NAF, that's the Air Force, to fly Nigerians. Why Tinubu flawed Atiku Obi by President Buhari. President-elect urges governors to back party on National Assembly top positions. Buhari to spend retirement in Kaduna, and 6 billion naira goods lost in Zaria market inferno, 14 killed in Bauchi road crash. Chukudi.
Thank you, Kingsley. Let me start with what I think affects the people. Well, the two items I have affect the people. One is on security, the other one is on national economics. Now, FG plans supplementary budget as National Executive Council suspends subsidy removal. This is while existing plans for palliatives are being reviewed. I keep saying that dialogue solves everything, ultimately. I like the general attitude so far towards the planned removal of subsidy, ladies and gentlemen, I should say. If you consider how much the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has been banging on Nigeria's doors over, the need to stop subsidizing petroleum products, you would feel that the federal government has been reasonably, solidly introspective, about taking the action desired by these international monitors. I told a man in my car this morning that a government has so far started a show of goodwill by announcing 40% increase in basic salary. He would not even let me finish pronouncing salary. He said, no, Oga, don't even go there. That increase has been in the works since the past 4 years. It must never be related to the planned subsidy removal. How can you tell me that 40% increase in basic salary is going to account for about 600 naira per liter? He had already fixed his price. You see, this country is full of people who are productive, whether negatively or positively. So the point is, at the end of the day, I like the step-by-step approach towards the explosive issue of removing petroleum subsidy. I really like it, and I want to encourage them to go on taking it one day at a time, because it is really something that takes us to a very contentious matter. Let them work it out. President Muhammadu Buhari is telling us that about 60,000 soldiers were recruited under his watch. This is coming from President Muhammadu Buhari, as I just said. Now, it's not just a recruitment of more military boots on the ground. A marked improvement, we must say, has happened in terms of equipping the Nigerian military to face the scourge of insurgency, banditry, and kidnapping, which we have been facing. Whether critics like it or not, the arrival of the Tucano jets was a marked departure from the nearly derelict state of equipping for the Nigerian armed forces. And
was it deployed?
Was the Tucano jets? Yeah, I think so. I want to think so. Kingsley, please correct me if I'm wrong.
But they've been in service.
Of course they've been in service. The Tucano jets have been doing sorties. I've read that several times. I'm surprised you're asking. You didn't want them to deploy the war.
You weren't sure yourself.
Look at this smart lady. Okay, whatever happens, we still want to say, fine, President Muhammadu Buhari, we want to commend you. You see, one thing I liked about the president is that as soon as he stepped in, he showed that a military man was in the know about how insurgency should be dealt with. Remember the deployment of the men who are in the theater of operation right to where the theater of operation, was and still is maybe. And apart from that, he kept on doing things that showed he had a passion for helping the soldiers to do better. But it is not yet uhuru. We must tell the incoming administration. I am saddened by the fact that there are seeming cases of resurgence in Benue and even my dear old Jos, where I have been, very happy that things were simmering down. There's still work to do at the end of the day. That's it.
I was just going to comment on Mr. President's appearance. I didn't know how that would sound. I was going to say once a general, always general, meaning that if you look at, him adorned in those, looking
fatigue.
Yeah, looking real nice on him.
Also,
yes. That's how she say it. Yes, but I don't know. I don't know if there are other stories. The other one that I would also like to talk about is the fact that the Nigerian students in Sudan have left Sudan on their way to Nigeria, and we must also commend the aircraft, the owners of the aircraft that have volunteered to, to rescue these Nigerians. That's Air Peace and Co. We must also commend them. That's the show. That's how we are.
That's how we were. I am still happy that that's how some of us still are. Look, when I had that plastic cup, I think I was about two and a half years old. And the green was fluttering on the field of Pilgrim Baptist #1 Primary School. And the Chief Boy Scout, Okumabwa, mounted the podium. I'm talking about Independence Day. There was something that shot through our nerves, a zeal, for the good of country. We have to continue that feeling. We don't have any other country. Nobody is here to play sycophant to anybody. Your country is your country. So whoever is helping to evacuate those people is behaving accordingly. Those who are not joining the effort should cover their faces in shame. If you can help, please help.
Well, thank you. Sometimes you have to ask yourself why we are either so pessimistic or so cynical or otherwise so distrustful of our country and of our government. Yesterday on Good Morning Nigeria, our focus again, as we had done on Tuesday earlier in the week, was on the evacuation of Nigerians from the Sudan. And the guests we were supposed to get for the program, we couldn't get across to the guests. He's in Sudan on the way to Cairo. And he later, of course, got in touch with one of our producers to say that the network was flattered, the network was dead. So there was no communication with him. And then another Nigerian official who was supposed to join us from Cairo had walked flat out up to about 4 a.m. And of course, he just slept off. And Good Morning Nigeria had started by 7. Later on, when he woke up, he realized that time had gone. So he sent an apology to say this was what happened. Why am I saying this? Throughout yesterday, and I'm sure you must have received the messages or you must have also seen it on various posts about how the bus conveying Nigerian students from Sudan had broken down or run out of fuel in the desert. and the passengers were there, they were stranded, and so on and so forth. It was as if they had been taken into a hellhole, and the help was not on the way. I had drawn attention to the fact yesterday that, look, this is not a ride for tourists.
Exactly.
It is not a ride for tourists. It was a question to ask where the transporters were going to get their fuel supplies from. Shops are closed, businesses are shut down, and it's a virtual war situation in Sudan. So if they ran out of fuel or they had a broken down vehicle, what was needed was help to come for them rather than mocking the Nigerian authorities for saying, you say you spent $1.2 million and then your students are stranded in the desert. And I'm saying this against the backdrop of when you see the other nationals who have been evacuated to safety, whether in Djibouti, in Saudi Arabia, or elsewhere in France, you can see the relief on their faces. I have not seen in any of those accounts reports mocking them, because all nations have not been able to evacuate all of their citizens from Sudan, have they? But you know, we just keep telling ourselves, oh, there are 5,000 students, everybody must live at the same time. There is no aircraft that can take all persons out at the same time.
Kingsley, we have not always been like this. I don't know how it happened.
You know, Kingsley,
we became so cynical, so dismissive. Social media came and we now felt, oh, they have provided us a tool to damage our enemy, both imagined and real. That's not how we have always been. There's a program I'm handling somewhere for Luxterra. Now, I had the privilege of meeting a wonderful lady, the daughter of the secretary to the Sardauna of Sokoto. I'm talking about Hannatu Halilu. She told me, Chukudi, goodness does not come to people who do not show gratitude.
You know, Kingsley, like I said, I wanted to thank you very much for even raising that. I was going to raise that because there's a story on the inside page of The Punch, which also speaks, you know, to the issue that you have raised. And a portion of it says that in a video obtained by, you know, this paper's correspondent, a female student was seen yelling, "Before we started this journey, we fought, and now that we have the privilege of moving, the driver dropped us in the middle of this desert." That is one. In also a video cited by this correspondent, a student was seen crying and saying, "Because your family and children and nephews are on the bus, that is why we are left behind." How bad?
It's not right. That's not how we have. I mean, how we have been.
Well, let me keep my mouth in check.
You've already said it.
Yes, because I mean, we should appreciate what those people are doing.
No, but when you show appreciation, don't you feel something inside you?
It's not easy.
You feel good.
It's not easy.
I don't know.
Please, we'd like to appreciate the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you know, the Honorable Abike David Rewa's Commission, and everyone who has put hands and heads and eyes and legs together, whatever resources that you have, to ensure that these students, you know, are out of harm's way. And indeed, we must also, you know, be grateful to Almighty God that no one so far has been hurt.
Well, that's a good one. Well, let's not get back to that issue. Look, I've started the example. Let me just mention it again in passing. When Charles Taylor and his rebel group invaded Monrovia during the Liberian Civil War, Nigerians were stranded in the Nigerian embassy in Monrovia, in Liberia. And there were fatalities. 2 journalists, Chris Modibe and Tayo Awotusin, were eventually murdered by Charles Taylor's men. One of those who was amongst them,
crudely murdered.
One of those amongst them, Frank Igwebeze, who survived, and is still alive, is in Delta, told the story of what happened. When everyone was looking for an escape route, some people went this way, others went the other way, and that's how it all happened. But now the Nigerian government is responding. You saw the way they lifted them from Ukraine, how they lifted them from Libya, and so on and so forth. So when there is a problem, our attitude should be, how do we fix that problem?
Solutions first.
Yes. Other than saying that, it says, look, you are incompetent, you are incompetent. I don't know. It doesn't work. That's one. Two, very quickly. We keep talking about fuel subsidy removal deadline. Yes, it was part of the budget, June this year, take off the subsidy. The conditions precedent to that was the fixing of the refineries. Where are we
In the fixing of the
with the refineries?
Kingsley, this is something we probably continue to talk about. We'll continue to talk about it.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
I'm adjusting
hopefully
my
the president-elect, you know, at least before this time, during the campaigning period, you know, had a lot of things to talk about, oil and gas. You know, the progressives, Kingsley, I mean, you were here, came and they talked about what, you know, is on the table. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that as soon as that happens, you know, we'll probably see, you know, lights inside the tunnel. If Kingsley.
Of course, that's it. Pele, I mean, we all know him. He passed away in December last year. His name, or his moniker, has now been added to the Portuguese dictionary. The word Pele, and it means in Portuguese, out of the ordinary.
Yeah. All right, so while we go and say thank you, Chukwudi, for being with us, and to wish you a pleasant weekend as always, we'll hope to see you back here on Monday. Let's also, Kingsley, wish Jide Ojo. Of course, we all know Jide Ojo. He's one of our regular, you know, face here. Of course, today is his birthday. He's also marking his 54th birthday today. So, Jide Ojo, I know you're watching. Let's take a break now. All right, welcome back, and you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Our next conversation this morning, of course, borders on new policy on agricultural extension. And to set the tone for our conversation, let's listen into the background report put together by Ekene Ndulue.
As Nigeria's population grows and consumption per person increases, the demand for food is rising. There is no gainsaying the fact that food is a basic need for everyone, and its availability is essential for peace and development of any nation. Nigeria is blessed with a total agricultural area of 70.8 million hectares, distributed among the arable land area of 34 million hectares. Indeed, a land with huge potentials, capable of feeding itself and even exporting for income. But first, mechanization is the way to go before these huge potentials can be realized. This knowledge is not lost on the Nigerian government, and it approved a new policy on agricultural extension services to bridge the gap. The policy was aimed at making the practice of agriculture in the country technology-driven, aiding the drive for food and nutrition security. For effective implementation of the policy, 100,000 extension service agents were recruited last year. These agents are charged with the task of engaging rural farmers, helping them to gain clear insights into effective agricultural practices to overcome some of their challenges. On this episode of Good Morning Nigeria, guests will be speaking on the new policy on agricultural extension services.
All right, thank you very much, Ekene Ndulue. With us in the studio here, we have a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria, Professor Mohammed Kuta Yahaya. He's a professor of agricultural extension and development communication at the University of Ibadan. Professor Kuta, we're glad to have you this morning.
It's a pleasure to join you this morning.
All right. Also here with us is Honorable Munir Baba Danangundi. He's a member of the House of Representatives, where he chairs the Committee on Agricultural Colleges and Research Institutes. Honorable Munir, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Also joining us via Zoom all the way from Katsina is architect Kabiru Ibrahim. And architect Kabiru Ibrahim is Board of Trustees, National Agriculture Foundation of Nigeria. Architect Ibrahim, good to see you. Although your face is a bit dark, I don't know if you can brighten it up for us. Okay, we'll just give you some time to do that for us. Meanwhile, we also have joining us via Zoom from Zaria, Professor Emmanuel Ikani. He's Executive Director, National Agricultural Extension and Research Liaison Services, University of Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. I was going to call that Ikani. Prof, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, Kingsley.
Okay, let's begin with Professor Kuta Yahaya. What is the new policy all about with respect to agricultural extension services?
Oh, Kingsley, thank you very much. Maybe it is also nice to provide historical antecedent so that we will appreciate where we're coming from. Since the first Department of Botanical Gardens was established in 1893 in the Lagos colony, and the subsequent establishment of the first Department of Agriculture in Mo Plantation, Ibadan in 1914, Nigeria has never had an extension policy. And the stakeholders have been so disturbed and agitated, and they have been in the works to galvanize all stakeholders and policymakers at the highest level for Nigeria to have an extension policy. And 130 years later, here we are. The government of President Muhammad Buhari has brought to limelight on the historic date of 12th of April 2023, the Federal Executive Council approved a new national policy for agricultural extension. So we must pay glowing tribute to President Muhammad Buhari, who has the heart of gold and concern for Nigerian farmers since his inception in office. What has happened to extension in the near past? It has been ad hoc, where different programs of government, like you have Operation Feed the Nation, National Food Security Programs, Back to Land Program, and then the almighty Agricultural Development Programs in Nigeria that was sponsored by the World Bank. The ADPs were very popular in Nigeria in the 80s and 90s when the World Bank provided funding. And immediately the World Bank withdrew and the project closed. Extension went comatose because all the ADPs across the country also collapsed. So the issue of sustainability has been a challenge because there's no policy on the ground that will spell out what every key stakeholder is supposed to be doing and contributing to its sustainability, because there is no policy on the ground, no legislation to back up some of those programs. So if a regime enacts or come up with a program that is to provide extension services, the moment the regime goes, everything goes. So after World Bank withdrawal its funding, extension collapsed. And now we feel that if you have a policy on ground, it will help sustain the agenda for extension service delivery. Because we all know extension is the heart of agriculture. When you stop it, you will not get other things right, because they are the connecting road between research and the end users of products, and between policy generation and mobilization of the people that are going to benefit from those policies. And primarily they are the farmers across the entire value chain of agriculture, not only in production, but in other aspects of processing, grading, and then marketing. And that is why even some of the programs initiated now, like rural access mobility, that was to create roads, rural roads, it was changed to rural agricultural mobility and marketing program, so that if rural access mobility and marketing program, so it's no longer just rural roads, you also create nodes of marketing along the routes so that farmers can bring their goods and get people that can evacuate them. So I think the entire agricultural policy now is to engage the entire tiers of government, from the federal to state and to local government. So the policy has captured everybody, roles and responsibilities. This policy now, the moment it is published and it becomes public, it will now be domesticated at the state level, and with notes of implementation at the grassroots level and local government level.
Okay, I know we will get to the nitty-gritty of the policy, but so that we carry the viewer along and we break down what we are talking about, it's not more of an academic, exercise. I mean, permit my ignorance. I know botany has, a number of sub, departments and all that, but I didn't know that you could study extension. Is something is a course of study. So what are the areas? What are the subjects? As regards agriculture, how does it affect agriculture?
Well, agriculture is like an elephant. If you touch the air, you think you have captured it. If you touch the leg, it's the same thing. Agriculture is an embodiment of the entire processes that have different specialties that when is unbundled to department, to units, so that people can specialize and make meaningful impact. You have agronomic studies, which has to do with processes of production of crops, which include studies in soil, horticulture, and even other ingredients like crop protection and other variables that are related to crops only. Then you have animals, livestock, where you talk about animal birth production. You have ruminants, that's huge, big animals like cattle, goats, and sheep. Then you have non-ruminants like poultry and others that are small animals. Then you have the entire animal biochemistry, which deals with a lot of chemical issues related to animal nutrition, animal health, and all the gamut that have to do with animals. Then you talk about agricultural economics, talking about management of the resources of production, land, capital, labor, and human involvement in that. Then you have the master of all, that is agricultural extension, who is the generalist, generalissimo of the entire actors in the agricultural system. He is so knowledgeable about every concept of agriculture because he's like the intermediary between those in other, production or systems and the end user, the farmers. He is the one that is trained to understand the nitty-gritty of all these actors, and when they have an innovation, he is able to interpret and transmit it to the farmer. That is the beauty of extension. And in the extension, again, it will surprise you to note that extension, because it deals with human beings. When you talk about livestock, you are dealing with what? Animals. Even though there is a rule now that you must also care for animals, animal rights, and so on, when you are dealing with crops, they don't talk. You only study, carry to laboratory, find out where these pests are coming from, and you look for entomologists to deal with those insects.
How did they get their nutrients?
And you deal with that. Then nutrition, what are the combinations of minerals that you need that will maximize production and protect them until you have maximum yield? But extension is dealing with human beings. That's why you talk about human psychology. You talk about communication skills. So many people are wondering in our specialty in agricultural communication, because we are the ones providing the end product to the interpretation for the farmers. You now have human ecology dealing with production, home economics, and all that had to do with human beings. Then you talk about the real cornerstone, the rural sociology, dealing with rural people, because we agree that agriculture is a rural occupation, hitherto. But now is everybody's occupation. Even the urban dwellers are deeply involved in agriculture now. So you have somebody who is trained in the rural sociological concept of interacting with rural people in terms of their lifestyles, in terms of their challenges, in terms of addressing their challenges, and all gamut of dealing with them. And so therefore, if you want to talk about extension, is a wide range of issues that deals with making sure that agriculture maximizes its potentials.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Well, thanks also for the question. I mean, since the 70s, to the best of my recollection, University of Nigeria, Nsukka had been offering degrees in agric extension as one of the sub-disciplines in the Faculty of Agriculture.
That's right.
Under which you also have crop science, you have soil science, agric economics.
That's right.
And all that.
Forestries and...
yeah, no, Nsukka wasn't doing forestry.
Okay.
Forestry was at UI.
UI, that's right.
And I think University of Benin, the Faculty of Agriculture was close to the zoo at UNN then, and there were some lions in there at the time, but those lions, I hear they are long since gone. And one of the best refectories then was also pretty close to the zoo. Also by Kenswa Ref. That's what I used to eat.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot.
The lion is coming back.
Thank you. I want to bring in again, before we come to the Honorable Member of the House, with respect to the issues itemized by Professor Kuta, Professor Emmanuel Lekane, who is Executive Director of National Agricultural Extension and Research Liaison, so that we can contextualize the necessity for the new policy. What went wrong previously? I mean, is it necessarily the case that agricultural extension was haphazard, or people just abandoned agric extension services? Because to the best of my recollection also, I mean, when MANR, as Ministry of Agriculture and Natural Resources, used to function well in the States, you saw extension service workers in different parts of the state for cash crops and then also for food crops. So what went wrong? Was it just simple abandonment or just not knowing what to do? All right, I understand that. All right, I understand we've lost the Zoom connection to Emmanuel Lekane. So we'll come back to the studios here, and the question goes to Honorable Munir.
Thank you very much. I think my understanding of the question is the advent of oil in the country has contributed a lot in making agriculture to be at the lowest point in terms of what has happened before the oil, you know. So that is the major reason that has contributed to the low activities in terms of whatever extension or in terms of production, research and what have you. But what we are seeing, agriculture employs about 73% of the labor force in Nigeria and contribute about 85% on the non-oil sector. And for me, is the only window that we can harness, considering the Nigeria's population, to give an employment to our teeming population, youth and what have you. And then also, if you look at it, even the youth, by the time you look at the statistics of those in our universities, they hardly go for agriculture. They don't want to even study agriculture. So we just have to change the narrative. It's only when you have the basics, background, that you will come and even support the sector. So these are I think some of the challenges I understand, because I chair the Committee on Research Institute and the Colleges of Agriculture. And then also, we have been having policy somersaults in the country. Today we start from, you see, from the early 70s, even 60s, from green revolution to green, we came
Alternative.
Green alternative, even GS growth enhancement program under good luck, then we come to green alternative and many other things. And when we are talking about policy, That is the main concern for us as legislators. If you have good policies, in this country you have good policies, but implementation is our problem. Or even if you have the right implementation, when you start, another government that comes will just abandon that and take another course. So for us, the way I understand and what I've been pursuing is to ensure that some of these good policies must be backed by legislation, so that nobody can come one day and open his eyes and say, okay, I'm changing from A to B, or A to D, I mean. So these are some of the challenges. But Nigeria, I have not seen a country that is endowed with potentials, both human and natural, in terms of agriculture.
All right.
So what I think, what I'm even envisaging is like we really don't even understand what God has done to us as a country. Because you just chew mango, throw it away, without watering, it will start germinating.
All right, let's just put you on hold now.
Yes.
We will return to you again as honorable member, to find out the role that you also played in ensuring that this, policy, came to light. But we'll go to, we will join the architect Kabir Ibrahim, member, Board of Trustees, National Agricultural Foundation of Nigeria, who is joining us from Katsina, if we have him on Zoom. Architect Kabir Ibrahim, I don't know how much this policy would, appeal to very established farmers like you, but a lot of our farmers are smallholder farmers. So I'm just going to ask you, how relevant is this policy to their needs and demands at this time?
First of all, I want to express our gratitude for the approval of this policy. It's been long in coming. We have had extension embedded in all the policies that we have enacted for a very long time, but we have never had a policy. We thank Professor Kuta and his colleagues for their perseverance to get this done. Now we can practice our profession or occupation without let or hindrance, because you see, when you have a seed type, it may be very good, but you need to be educated on how to utilize it. You need to be educated on what it needs to thrive. So the farmers are very, very grateful for this, and we look forward to implementation across the country. It is one thing to have the policy, but quite another to have the implementation. I am glad that the states are taking cue into this. They are embracing the policies of the federal government, in spite of the fact that some of them do not belong to the party of the central government. I am glad to also announce that in Katsina State, I chair the agricultural reforms, and we have made extension services as the foremost consideration in developing agriculture in Katsina State. As far as we are concerned, the work that we are doing is going to sprout from a very good extension policy. Now that this has been passed or approved on the 17th of this month, we are sure that it will take shape all over the country. In Katsina State, we will ensure that it is part of our report. And in Nigeria, we are going to make a clarion call to all the states to implement it, judiciously. Now, for Nigeria to really get out of the difficulties that we're in, we must concentrate on agriculture. And the time is now. Now that we have this policy in place, and we have a very good policy covering 2022 to 2027, with the implementation of very good extension policy, we are sure to have food sufficiency and then food security. The example of the United States of America that had the extension policy from 1914 is it resonates around the world. food is never a problem in the United States. Agricultural prosperity is very clear even on those people who partake on a commercial level. Some of them are the richest people in the country. In fact, if you look at the history of President Carter, he became America's president as a peanut farmer in Plains, Georgia. So I think we should embrace this and make sure that the state governments implement it assiduously and properly. Without taking too much of your time, I would like to reiterate that all the farmers of this country are very happy for this, and we are going to follow through to make sure that our various states implement this so that we avoid the jettisoning of policies, good policies on paper, and not implementing them. The honorable member has adduced to the fact that it's not that Nigeria does not have good policies, but sometimes policy somersaults is the bane of our progress. For economic growth to happen in Nigeria, you must go back to agriculture. And the recent approval of this policy goes a long way to ensure that this happens. So I don't want to take too much of your time on this question.
You have just talked, over the question. What is the relevance? How does it address the issues that are found in all the chains of agriculture? How does this policy address the issues that the smallholder farmers are going through now? Can we match the content of the policies to the particular issues that we are facing?
Yes, in fact, you see, extension covers all the gamut of agricultural production, processing, and even consumption. You see, all aspects of agriculture come into play, including livestock. We have played a very bad role in terms of livestock in Nigeria. Extension in livestock is very germane to the productivity in that sector. And now the problem that we have is importation of milk, for instance. With very good extension services, we might be able to revamp our milk production. We should be able to also optimize the production of all the crops with very good extension. Where we are getting like 2 tons on using hybrid seeds, for instance, with very good extension, we can go up to 4. With 5 sometimes, and even more. And this cut across all crops. And now I think if you know that the federal government recently, or in the past few years, engaged the Empower people, about 100,000 people, into extension. But without a policy, those people are only being paid. There is no money for their training and retraining, and sometimes for their farm visitations. But now with a policy, every state will take a buy-in, and we will be sure to have an extension service all across the country, and everything will be done properly. And this whole thing will not just affect one crop. It will affect all the crops, including livestock. And it will even include also processing. People set up rice mills, and they produce rice and they just sell it without taking care to be sure that the affordability of the commodity is very germane to the progress of the country. If you do proper extension, people will be taught that for what they produce to even have universal appeal, it has to be a certain type, it has to have the same tonality, the same grain size, the same everything for it to be exported. Now that we have AFTA, we stand a chance of even making good foreign exchange earnings from Africa and then even beyond. And then if we have a good extension service that optimizes our production, we will be able to do that. So extension service cuts across all facets of agricultural productivity or production. I believe this answers your question on the several aspects that the extension will affect.
All right. Thank you very much, Architect Kabiru. If Professor Emmanuel Ekane is back on Zoom, I would like him to also weigh in on this. What are the highlights of the new policy on agricultural extension services that should make it heartwarming?
Thank you for again having me. This is a great question. What are the
Did you get the question?
content of the new
content is
yes, the highlights will include one.
The Zoom connection to Professor Ikane is freezing, and so that question automatically comes to Professor Kuta Yahaya right here in the studios with us.
Yes. The good news is that, as I highlighted before, that sustainability has always been the problem of most of our interventions in extension. And many programs that evolved with different governments, different regimes, right from the National Accelerated Food Production Program, the Operation Feed the Nation, the Green Revolution, Back to Land, and so many of them like that. The challenge has been in no funding arrangement, sources of funding that will sustain the activities will always cease as the government or the promoter goes. So what this policy is looking at now is to look at and leverage on the National Agricultural Fund that has just been established and other sources where there will be a certain percentage that will be responsible for extension work in Nigeria. And that will help if the devolving of the policy to states and local government is achieved. Is no longer going to be policy hanging in the air. It is going to also devolve. And if you look at many countries that have done well, as Architect Kabiru Ribran alluded, in 1914, the Lever law in the United States was timely. You have the land grant universities intervention in the United States. Those are the foundations. Countries like Malawi, countries like Uganda. In fact, Uganda hosted the whole of Africa Extension Week in 2021. And it was at that conference that Nigeria was requested as the big brother Africa to host the next edition of the conference. And so all of us in the Nigerian Forum for Agricultural Advisory Services and Agricultural Extension Society of Nigeria, the Rural Sociological Association of Nigeria, we are all worried that how could Nigeria be hosting the whole of Africa, yet we don't have an extension policy. And countries like Malawi and others that are doing well, in Uganda, South Africa, and all other countries have robust extension policy that really deals with policies that, issues that deals with agriculture, and extension is the vital link. All the operations, the research linkages, the on-farm research, adoptive research that extension used to have were all abandoned because of lack of funding. Now with this policy, it will revitalize all arms of extension in every institution that is responsible. And as you said, the manpower development, the first department, sole Department of Agricultural Extension. As you know, the first Faculty of Agriculture was at the University of Ibadan in 1948. And then subsequently the first Department of Agricultural Extension, because extension has always been an appendage to agricultural economics. You see there is agricultural economics as extension. Extension because there was the background challenge of people training extension. The pioneer people who were doing extension work were people who were agronomists drafted. I used to call them conscripted to do extension work because they don't have the background training like we do now. You have graduates of bachelors with a degree in extension, masters in extension, PhD in extension, ended up in a career as director in the one department as a director of extension or professor or anything that you can think of. So with that now, we have the manpower opportunity, professionally trained people that can take extension to any level. So with that, we are satisfied that we don't have the issue of who do you bring to do it. I am very happy that the current administration of President Muhammad Buhari, right from inception in 2015, set up a committee to look at the whole gamut of extension challenges in Nigeria, because he said, and I'll quote him, that he is very familiar with Babanlare in those days, in the 50s. Where are they again? You see extension work on radio, you can feel it, you can do it. NRLS Zaria was very popular for providing, material.
Kingsley asked a question when we started.
Yes.
Said, what happened? What happened? So, what happened to those good days? And who was driving the funding? Because I see a greater component of the policy is on funding.
Yes.
The funding parameters and all that. So, who was driving the funding in those days? Because it was, you said it, we used to hear extension workers. We used to hear. So what happened to them?
It's because the logistics of the extension worker to do his job, to reach out to the farmers, at that time was well programmed, was well funded, and then suddenly they were all abandoned. No funding. As I said, when the World Bank intervened, they started with the enclave project in Gusau, Bida, Gombe. And later it escalated to about 12 states and then became nationwide. At that time, the beauty of extension was obvious because you could see demonstration plots all over the country, you could see interventions, and people were happy, farmer was getting. I'll give one example. I used to have a military friend, he's retired now. He established a farm and he wanted to do cowpeas. And cowpeas started, so he went to where they're selling knapsack sprayer and chemicals. And he bought chemicals and went straight to his farm to go and apply. The whole beans was burned down because he didn't have the right combination, knowledge. The right knowledge. And the extension is about what we call CAP, knowledge, attitude, and practices. The moment you inject knowledge, it's like going to trigger change in attitude and automatically lead to practices that will be wholesome and that will be impactful and that will be result-oriented. So when you don't have people to provide knowledge, as a military officer of the rank of lieutenant then, you wouldn't expect him that he doesn't know what he's doing. But he was not educated. He just bought the chemicals and he just maybe tried to read the pamphlet that if you put it in this container, you go and apply it to your farm. It burned down the farm. So when I went to him, I said, why did you do this? He said, nobody told him what to do. So we need people in extension that will interface at every level. And that is why agriculture now is not only talking about production, but it's talking about the entire value chain. Up to the consumer, as he said. We need to educate people. Yes, sir.
Prof, let me interject so that we begin to bring this conversation nearer home.
Yes, sir.
Honorable Munir raised again a perennial challenge that we have, which is one of implementation. In terms of, I'm not quite clear about the highlights of this new policy on agricultural extension services. What makes the policy unique? This is why I'm saying it. Agriculture is not on the exclusive legislative list. State governments, local governments, private individuals can partake and participate in it.
That's right.
So, why then are we having this top policy that is expected to cascade down? And if it is to cascade down, how will it work? There were extension service workers in the regions, in Western region, driving the cash crops, in the Midwest, but driving the cash crops, that we had in the Southeast. Oh, yeah, before the advent of oil. That's what I'm saying. So
the beauty of this.
So what is going? What is this policy now supposed to change?
The beauty of this is that this policy is not top down; it's bottom up. That's the beauty of this policy.
Okay.
It started with consultative forum around the 6 geopolitical zones, which encompass stakeholders across states who are members of the executive of State Executive Council, commissioners of agriculture of all the 30 states were involved at each of the regional dialogue and consultation. Chairmen of or persons of agricultural committee of the House of Assembly of all the states were also involved in the dialogue. All NGOs who have, and farmers associations, community-based associations, everybody that has to do with agriculture at the state level in all the 6 geopolitical zones met and brought out their issues, their challenges to the extension. And they now came.
I think, Prof.
Yes, sir.
What he's trying to say.
Yes.
He is talking about how will the policy address the issues like in those good days.
That's what I'm saying.
Nowadays.
He is saying that.
Because what we are saying, first, yes. I expected you to tell us, do we have the right number of extension workers as against the teeming smallholder farmers in Nigeria?
Look, the issue of the problem...
There should be a standard ratio of 1 extension worker to
800. That's the FAO recommendation.
To the number of farmers. So we need to be guided by that. Then secondly, also, the technologies, what we are seeing now, you know, there are a lot of research findings and kept on the shelves. Nobody is taking it to the farmer these days. I will give you one example. I chair the Committee on Research Institute. When we were interrogating the Cocoa Research Institute, they produced 80,000 seedlings lying down, nobody to take it. These are improved cocoa seedlings. The state governments are not taking it. I ask why? Lack of transportation, lack of even the farmers to be aware of this, this, you know, Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast is the largest producer of cocoa in West Africa, followed by Ghana, then come to Togo, then Nigeria. But the potentials in Nigeria far outweighs what we have in these 3 countries. But as I said, if we have this cocoa, all the cocoa plantations, it's the issue of extension that will take this to replace them and move forward so that our production can increase. We produce less than 300,000 metric tons cocoa as against Ivory Coast with Cote d'Ivoire with 2 million metric tons, Ghana almost 1 million. So these are the challenges of extension. The research is, some of the key research findings are there, but taking them to the right people.
You see,
so this policy, I think, is trying to address. First, we must have funding to get the right people so that they can take it. Yes.
Honorable, thanks again. We're breaking it down now. Still, let's make this an open book. What does our policy entail? First of all, in terms of personnel.
Yes.
Are you just going to be picking people from the streets and say you are agric extension service workers? And if you are then recruiting persons, the right caliber of persons as agric extension service workers, whose employees will they be? Or should they be? That's what I'm saying. What does the policy say? Is it the federal government that is going to employ extension service workers for everybody?
Who drives?
State governments. And then when you say, look, how will they work?
You know, agri is in the concurrent list.
Yes.
You understand? Let me give you an example. The local government, you know, we have a lot of people that are employed in the agri department. They read maybe diploma in agricultural science or in animal husbandry and whatever. But they even lack the knowledge to provide the extension. So we must go back to some of these basics. What is the responsibility of the local government at that level, then the state, then the federal? I think for me, the state and the local government should be more concerned to employ. Then there is an avenue for private sector to involve in what do you call it, in the extension, private sector. If you look at some of these companies that are coming up, like Flour Mills Nigeria, you see, because of the situation worldwide, now they are geared towards producing wheat in the country. So they went and employ their extension workers, their people to ensure that they do the right thing and produce the wheat that they will process in the country. So I think this policy is, to my understanding, is to support and to ensure that we have a system that is sustainable. That's right. That is sustainable for the country. Unlike, I remember I was employed in 1986 as an extension worker in Jigawa State in Hadija. I was in ADP at that time, so I can remember some basic varieties of rice seeds, BG90, ITA 212. That was the first time I came to understand that these varieties are good for planting and they give 4 tons per hectare at that time. So after some time, some of these varieties were no more. So I can remember vividly.
Who employed you when you
the ADPs?
The one funded by the World Bank.
By the World Bank.
Yeah, and a country that is driving food security cannot be relying on an international financial institution for services of this nature.
And that is why this policy is in place.
So
this policy is insisting that you must have a well-organized funding arrangement. And also,
it's insisting that the tiers of government,
are involved. It's not that the federal government just established a policy. No, it is in concert with state and local government and all the stakeholders. So nobody at the state or the local government will reject this policy. They don't understand it. It's part of it. And then to dovetail into the existing structure who employ the extension agent, you now have specified qualifications for those who qualify to execute extension work. And then now you can even see that the Federal Ministry of Agriculture has employed 70,000 based on presidential mandate. They will be deployed and sent to states, because most of the states, those who are employed by the ADP then, as he was employed, was under World Bank funding. A majority of them are retiring or retired. And most states are not able to recruit more because there is not even extension work to do. So this is a revitalization mission. And that is why every stakeholder from all the groups and associations that are affected are galvanized to make sure that this policy is operationalized. This is just the first stage. We don't have it before. Now we have. What we need to do, as Honorable said, we operationalize and work for the implementation in concert with the federal department, Department of Agriculture Extension, that is the arm of the Ministry of Agriculture. And at the state level, the states, the extension arm of every state Ministry of Agriculture and Natural Resources is the ADP.
Okay.
They are the one to go to the grassroots to make sure that the extension messages are delivered. But this one now is even talking about the probability of even having an institute that will, a professional institute that will certify and make sure that those who are practicing extension are go.
Professor, let me also put you on hold and bring in Professor Emmanuel Ikani. Yes, he's not had a chance to say a word since we started on account of the connectivity issues. Professor Ikani, so you have the floor now. You can weigh in on so many of the points that have been raised in the course of our conversation.
Extension is actually the game changer if you want to transit from traditional farming to modern farming. Extension is the game changer. And I'm happy that we now have I have said it. One of them is the major problem in the sector is funding. This extension policy really zeroed down on how the money should be raised and how it should be expended and who should do it. The other one is we're talking about staff and personnel. We also looked at the extension policy, looked at professionalization. Who should do it? Who should do it? And then we are still going to be backing up on the value chain concept, where we will not be focusing only on productivity. We go down to the table, farm to the fork. Then, but let me say this. The thrust of this extension is that we want it to be pluralistic. What that means that there's no one cap fit all. Every aspect of anybody that has a good extension approach, you will be allowed to practice. And then there's a space for the private sector to be engaged in the policy. And I want to also tell you that there's a space for e-extension, leveraging on the ICT, that if the rural farmer cannot have access, the extension agent cannot have access to the farmer can engage. Like in Zaria here, we have the national farmer plan, where they can call out directly whatever is the problem on their feet and their answer provided. And let me say this, that extension is purely about knowledge transfer. The output of research can never make any meaning to farmers until it passes through an extension system. And that's what it is. So this policy
Well, I'm afraid we'll again have to interrupt Professor Emmanuel Ikani. But when we come back from this short break, hopefully we should have gotten over the glitches there and returned to him. But let's go on a short break. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. And you're watching Good Morning Nigeria live from our studios in Abuja. Kingsley.
Again, let's come back to one of the issues that has been flagged now in terms of the new policy on extension services, funding. What does the policy say about the sources of funding and therefore the obligations of the respective stakeholders who are to be involved in agric extension? Prof.
Yes, as I said, is like the new policy is aware, and as we all said, Professor Kani has said it, we are all aware that the challenge of extension over the years has been funding. So in order to beat the odds, a new framework has been established where the extension will leverage on the agricultural extension, national agricultural fund and trust fund, and then the 3 tiers of government. Once the policy comes into place, they will now agree, just as we have done, that you have your source, the percentage will come that will go into the fund that will be used for both the logistics, the personnel, so that there is no reason for you not to be looking for, oh, there's no budgetary provision. All those things will be avoided. And then we are now going to take advantage of the partners that support this type of interventions. Instead of putting a fund that after a while you don't know what has happened, there will be a due process of accountability and process of implementation in the end.
Okay, well, Claire, yes. Frank, I want to bring in Architect Kabir.
Okay, please.
One more time. Architect Kabir, maybe you should also weigh in on the issue about the funding and recruitment. I'm not quite clear about this. Is it that we are having some centralized planning and coordination for agric extension? I would have thought that a policy could set out the broad outlines broad outlines on issues relating to criteria for recruitment, criteria for training, criteria for funding, and then because it is on this concurrent list, let the states, as the regions did in the past, take their bearing therefrom. If the Federal Ministry of Agric is having to recruit 70,000 agric extension workers, if I'm the state government, why would I go and spend money? I don't want to use the word waste money to recruit people. If whether you get paid or you don't get paid, we will deploy you. The day they don't pay you, we'll ask you to go, and then we are back to square one. What is the responsibility of the subnational entities? I'm asking this question advisedly because our national experience, from what we know, sometimes hasn't been quite salutary. We saw that for many years with UBEC, which is the Universal Basic Education Commission. And then the funding, states were required to provide counterpart funding. And a good number of the states never provided the counterpart funding. And even in recent years that there has been greater compliance in terms of providing counterpart funding, the news is still to the extent that they put in the counterpart funding. Once the federal government brings in its money, they quickly withdraw what they had put in and go and use it for another purpose. So how then do you get subnational entities to own up to their own responsibilities and ride with those responsibilities? Because ordinarily, it's agriculture, a matter of extension work is something that you'll be coordinating from the Federal Capital Territory?
Well, thank you, Kingsley, for highlighting this. I would want to dissect this matter and then appropriately tell you that the policy as proposed and approved by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture through the work of all the people involved in extension work is merely agricultural production, and agriculture itself takes place in the states and local governments. So we are farmers and we are in the rural areas. The thing that should happen for every state is that we must look at our competencies, the competencies that we have comparative advantage in, invest properly, raise a critical mass of extension workers, cater for them, train them on our own without waiting for the federal government to do it. The policy is there as an enabler to do that. And then no state will say that it is not aware of it because it's a policy, and agriculture, as you know, is on the concurrent list.
We do again apologize for that. Architect Kabiru Ibrahim was speaking earlier. I don't know if Professor Emmanuel Ikani, if he's back. Yes, Professor Emmanuel Ikani.
Extension service. We companies should contribute. The agricultural development fund that we got.
Sorry about that again. Okay, so let's get back to this.
Is it clear? I know, take this. I'm just remembering some of the things. Is it only when development partners or international financial institutions put in their money that we make a lot of...
that's when the accountability is enforced.
We make a lot of noise and force. ADP. Some years ago, you would be hearing ADP in the early 90s. Yeah. ADP. After a while, everything just went cold. Then we also started hearing Fadama 1, Fadama 2, Fadama 3. Then after a while, everything just went. Honorable Minister, you are smiling.
It's funding issue.
Sorry, Claire.
Yes, I think you see, at times, as I said, this issue of policy somersault and lack of coordination, even from top to bottom, in terms of these activities. As I said, the ADPs in the 80s, you see, is a very well-intentioned program, and it has succeeded in doing what is supposed to be done. I can even remember there was a program in Yobe and some parts of Borno, Northeast Arid Development Program. That program has addressed a lot of things because it has had extension workers, and has brought a lot of livelihoods and economic activities to that part of the country where we have this Boko Haram. And suddenly, when this project was no more, and this is one of the reasons we had this issue of Boko Haram that sprang off. No sustainability to continue with activities. I can see a very glaring success in that project. It has increased the livelihood of people. So if you look at the issue of the funding, we enacted the Agricultural Trust Fund agency, and is now being considered just to appoint who are going to manage the agency, and it will intervene and address some of the key challenges in the sector. Like you can say, okay, extension, what is our problem with the extension? They look at it, and just like TED Fund in the education sector, it will address some specific issues in this. But the issue is, as I said, first the state government, local governments, federal, everybody must sit up and ensure that what should I be doing in terms of extension? What should be the funding? Because we don't even prioritize agriculture in terms of the budgetary provisions. The Maputo Declaration says, Maputo Declaration says agriculture should be at least 10% of our budget. He has mentioned Uganda. Uganda and South Africa, these are the only self-sufficient countries in Africa today. And because the extension has been very intensive and rigorous, and funding in the sector, so now these countries are self-sufficient. Uganda, as you see it, as a small country than Nigeria.
So Honorable Dan Agundi, let's allow Professor Emmanuel Ikani to say a few words so that we don't end a conversation without him making, his contribution. Please also, let me not take your time. Please go ahead with it.
Okay. Yes. So I want to let you know by the year 2050, Nigeria will be the fourth largest populated country in the world after China, India, and America, United States. So a population of 430 million has been estimated by 2050. And so we need to pay attention to agriculture, and that can't be successful without extension agriculture playing a central role, and because it's about knowledge transfer. Having said that, this policy, I want to commend this administration for giving it to us. It has been a journey, like Professor Kuta said, since 2012, been on this journey, but it's now here. The main trust is about this issue of funding, which is there. You remember there's a government, NAPI. Now NAPI has a dedicated account for Nigerian agriculture, and the extension is supposed to draw down a percentage of that fund, the dedicated fund for agriculture. That is part of what in the policy. Then the crowding and the rowdiness that is happening in the space now, because of this policy, there will be regulation, there will be control. Who does what and how? This policy is bringing that on board, that we just said already. And then we are now going to allow the leverage for private sector to also engage in this matter, because it can't be retention funding and engagement policy accommodates that. And like
we're sorry, we can't continue with him, Professor Emmanuel Ikani. We understand that the area where he is have this peculiar network issues, so we do apologize for the glitches there. So, but let's come back here to the studio, and I'm going to ask both Professor Kuta and Honorable Danagundi. I mean, if you look at, we mentioned it earlier on, if you look at the agro, what is happening with rice and other, crops, wheat, for instance, and the Anchor Borrowers program and all that, the success that has been made so far, I don't know if it had the input of extension workers and to what extent. But my point is that the success was achieved without so much noise and emphasis about the need for extension workers.
Yes, for me, I think the amount spent on that and the output should have been more if the extension was involved in the actual what you call the when you want to have a project, you have design and implementation of the program. Because let me give you an example of the rice. The most important thing in agricultural productivity is the seeds, the quality seeds. Once you get the quality seed, you solve 50% of productivity in agriculture. But when you don't get the right seeds, then you see you have started with a problem. And then also, let me tell you, somebody who is going to have a seed that is the lowland variety, and also somebody with upland variety, taking the upland variety to go and put it in the lowland, you are reducing the productivity. And these are some of the basic knowledge you need to impact on the common man. Inputs, management of inputs, putting the right technologies at the right place and at the right time is something that extension can be able to tell a farmer, smallholder farmer. You can see also post-harvest issues. Post-harvest, you can get the production as, and then at post-harvest, you come and lose maybe 30–40% of it. So extension has to come in. Do you understand?
Yeah, that highlights the value of extension services one more time. But Professor Kutaya, let's again try to situate more properly the value of the new policy on agricultural extension services, so that it would not sound like some exaggeration when we say that it is the game changer in the agricultural sector. Because the point has also been made earlier by Honorable Munir that, we have to get our youth to be involved in agriculture. How will a policy on agri extension service be a game changer? You mentioned happily the example of former President Jimmy Carter, who was a peanut farmer. Was he cultivating peanuts in Plains, Georgia, using machetes and hoes? When are we really going to get into mechanization and then reduce the population of our persons or our people who are involved in direct cultivation? Subsistence. And the subsistence that we are doing, small guard grower, people scraping the earth and so on and so forth. You are familiar with this. When is it that we're going to start having, I mean, sometimes when you watch some of these things on television, in documentaries, you are saying to yourself, look, it's just one man who is in a tractor, maybe the combined harvester, and he's just going. In our own case here, you will see that they will carry, after harvesting, after slashing the grain, then you see them threshing it like that, wagga. So,
civil servants.
I think, Kingsley, because your desire that Nigeria should change overnight is what I'm sorry for you. But, we have to start from somewhere.
Yes.
We in extension profession in Nigeria today are celebrating this regime. For the fact that for 130 years, you have been running in and out, you don't even have a direction. We now have a direction. And let me tell you about mechanization. What Nigeria needs today, and I must tell President Buhari that he must do it before he leaves office, let's establish a national innovation platform where technologies generated in this country by research institutes, by agencies, should come for display. Let them know. Do you know NCAM, National Center for Agricultural Mechanization in Ilori? If you go there, you shed tears for Nigeria. The kind of technologies they have produced that can be replicated and reduce drudgery in small sizes, not the humongous, huge tractors imported from other countries at exorbitant cost that farmers cannot afford. Making agriculture attractive to young people. If you go there, you see all kinds of equipment that they have produced. Nobody to duplicate it for them. Okay. I'm telling you, I want you to go and do a research, a documentary on income. I'm sure they don't even have money to even do any documentary because of poor funding, but the intellectual involvement of producing technology from that institute is scary. How did I get to know? I was in an international conference with somebody from Ilori, and he was telling and showcasing the technology they have generated that can do a lot of things, from production to harvesting, even to preservation, that the Honorable is calling post-harvest handling. But they said they have produced, nobody to duplicate. You talk about research institute, even in our universities. NCR Badegi has produced the best variety of rice, Faro 44, Faro 54, and they have added a latest one now that can yield more than 5 tons per hectare. So, nobody is aware of them. So nobody is replicating them.
So this new policy implementation now, what is the assurance that this one will not die?
How do we take such inventions or such creations from the lab to the field?
That is extension, but extension need all these producers, innovators. We need an innovator platform to showcase that this is what we are producing, this is Nigeria. But a situation whereby I remember Sani Garba organizing Made in Nigerian Goods show in at Nigeria 60. Is at a loss. Yes. Because MDS did not even contribute to support what he has done. Up to now, they have not even redeemed the pledges they have made to him. Simply because, come and showcase Made in Nigeria. The vice president was there to flag it up. The SGF, everybody was there. Yeah. Celebrated. You'll be proud of Nigeria, what Nigerians are producing. Yes. But after all said and done, Nigerians prefer to import. Even MDAs, they will prefer to import so that they can spend extra code and make more money. Meanwhile, you are killing your local production at the expense. So extension has suffered enough. They will marginalize extension and make sure you don't take over their jobs because you are properly trained to do many things that they are doing. So they will marginalize. Okay, now somebody has brought extension to the surface, and we are talking about it. The conversation has just started. Mr. Kingsley, the next phase of this discussion should center on operationalization of the implementation of extension policy in Nigeria.
All right. So I don't have to ask any other question again.
That's right.
Because you have just concluded.
I think I write that we have Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria is an umbrella body that coordinates all the research institutes. And somebody who is coming to invest in Nigeria will definitely go to ARCN. In ARCN, they are showcasing all the research from cocoa research, from IAR, from ROBA research. They don't have to go to the state. In Abuja here, when they come, the first thing you can glimpse at what the country is endowed in terms of the research finding, you will be able to pick and ensure that you...
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable. And I think that, I mean, those who are very passionate about these issues should also find a way of channeling their concerns, their proposals, as well as instigation to, say, a forum like the National Economic Council. National Economic Council. I mean, it's not just on financial matters. Economy. This is it's a critical aspect of our economy. That's right. The National Economic Council is chaired usually by the Vice President, and I think that they said they've had their valedictory session for the outgoing administration. But you have all the governors who are there. The Ministry of National Budget and National Planning serves as the secretariat. The CBN is there. So these are the kind of issues to bring on. Just one aspect of not every time financial services, oil and gas. So bring out this aspect to say, how do you transform innovation, the product of research institutes, for our end users to have access to them? We're talking about funding now for extension services. Okay, the Bank of Agriculture will also come. Oh, no, we have the funds and so on and so forth. Are people able to access the Bank of Agriculture issues? And how do you align all of that?
Even
and then how do subnational entities reduce some of the, on the face of it, wasteful spending?
Yes, we just have to go. I'm sorry. We can't take more contributions. I'm sorry. Honorable Munri Baba Danagundi, member representing Gumboso Federal Constituency in Kano State, and is also Chairman House Committee on Agricultural Colleges and Research Institutes, House of Representatives. He is a third-time member. Thank you very much. Professor Mohamed Yayakuta, Professor of Agricultural Extension and Development Communication. The conversation on this continues.
Thank you, sir.
Yes,
and the doing as well.
Yes. And the doing. Let me also appreciate Architect Kabir Ibrahim, member Board of Trustees, National Agriculture Foundation of Nigeria, and of course Professor Emmanuel Ikani, Executive Director, National Agriculture Extension and Research Liaison. Both of you, thank you. Unfortunately, we couldn't take much from both of you, but we know your capacity and the much you contributed. Of course, will continue to be at least something we will talk about on this program. Yes, and the program and the conversation continues on the new agri extension policy. But for now, let's check our foreign news. What's going on from our foreign desk?
Sudanese fighter jets pounded paramilitary positions in Khartoum on Thursday, while deadly fighting and looting flared in Darfur, despite the army and a rival force agreeing to extend a ceasefire deal. In the final hours of a repeatedly broken 3-day ceasefire, the army and the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, announced a 72-hour extension following pressure from Saudi Arabia and the United States. There have been multiple truce efforts since fighting broke out in April 15 between Sudan's army led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and the paramilitary RSF commander, his deputy-turned-rival, Mohamed Hamdan Daglo. All have failed. Foreign representatives involved in seeking to quell the fighting welcomed the extended ceasefire deal and urged full implementation. In a joint statement, the African Union, the United Nations, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Britain, and the United States applauded the two sides' readiness to engage in dialogue towards establishing a more durable cessation of hostilities and ensuring unimpeded humanitarian access. Israel's ruling right-wing coalition of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu mobilized thousands of people to march in Jerusalem on Thursday in support of controversial judicial reforms that critics condemn as undemocratic. The government's proposals would curtail the authority of the Supreme Court and give politicians greater powers over the selection of judges. The controversy over the reforms has split the nation and divided the government. Netanyahu, on March 27, announced a pause to allow for talks on the reforms after an intensification of protests against them, the start of a general strike, and tensions within his coalition.
So that does it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria, and indeed for the week. We hope you enjoy your weekend. Don't forget, Monday is Labor Day, but we'll be back in the studio, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Enjoy your weekend, but look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak. As always, I invite you to join us, be our partner in the fight against rape and rapists. From all the GMN crew, have a pleasant weekend. Bye-bye.